This is WTMJ Conversations.
Hello there, I'm Eric Bilstead. Thanks for joining me as we speak with Andy Nunemaker today. Andy, the CEO of Dynamis Corporation. It's a provider of sales software in the healthcare insurance industry. He is no stranger to Milwaukee. He is on the board of directors for the Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra, the Milwaukee Art Museum, the Marcus Center for the Performing Arts. He's also spent some time at Valparaiso University in Indiana. He's also been awarded the 40 Under 40 by the Milwaukee Business Journal and has even been inducted now into the 40 Under 40 Hall of Fame. We have plenty to speak with Andy about today, including the Milwaukee startup scene, Milwaukee philanthropy and what that's like, his support for President Trump. But we start with, of course, the most important thing, his heritage. Andy Nunemaker, so that last name, what is that? Is that Dutch? What is that name?
Yeah, it's Pennsylvania Dutch, and it sometimes gets confused with the Swiss-German Nunemaker family that's also been in the area for 150 years, but no relation.
No relation. Are you a Milwaukee guy through and through?
Yeah, I grew up on the northwest side, lived here through high school, then went away to college, went away for the beginning of my career, and then ended up transferring back here about 15 years ago.
You have been everywhere. You're the CEO of Dynamis Corporation now, which we'll get into that a little bit later. I know you spent some time with GE Healthcare, spending some time in Southeast Asia, Australia, that part of the world. How in the world did you end up back in Milwaukee? It seems like you've been to Harvard, you've been to Georgia, you've been all across the world, and now you're still here on the east side.
Yeah, it's funny, when GE actually transferred me back to Milwaukee, it was the headquarters for GE Medical Systems at the time. I think my parents were completely shocked. I'd been coming back for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, and whatnot, but never really thought I'd end up back here. So it was a really nice coincidence. And then once I was back with GE, just kind of got established here, and it's a really easy, fun place to live.
Is this home?
It's home now, definitely. It'll always be home. Maybe not every January and February, but it'll always be home.
How do you have time to do stuff? Like, I'm shocked that I can talk to you today just because you do a million things. You're on the board of directors for Valparaiso, MSO, of course, the Symphony. You do all this other stuff other than just your job. You're a philanthropist. How do you find the time?
Yeah, I know, it's funny. So I used to teach at Marquette in the MBA program, and one of the things we always talked about was balance. And I just think it's important to have balance in your life. So for me, the two non-negotiables is 8 hours for sleep every night, 2 hours for the gym every day, and then the rest of the day I can do whatever. And back when I was working for GE, they could work me, 14 hours a day. But as long as I had my 8 hours for sleep and 2 hours for the gym, that was fine.
I like how you mentioned the gym, by the way, because you were, by the way, Milwaukee's fittest executive.
Oh, yeah, back in the day, that was a while ago.
Hey, you got to be proud of that.
Yeah.
Got to be proud of that. When you were a kid, what did you want to do? What did you want to be when you grew up?
So when I was a little kid, I told my mom I wanted to be an engineer, and she was really, really excited because my uncle had studied engineering and worked for Boeing. And she goes, "Oh, like your Uncle Frank?" I said, "Well, no, actually, I want to drive trains." So that was my dream as a little kid. I did get to drive a train when I worked for GE on their test track in Erie, Pennsylvania. So I guess I fulfilled that dream.
You checked that out
for 5 minutes, yeah.
Now, besides the philanthropic work, which I definitely want to ask you about later on, spending time with Dynamis Corporation, which clearly does a lot of different things when it comes to healthcare and software. How does that work exactly? What does that mean?
Yeah, so we're actually a company that was founded based on a need in the marketplace for buying benefits for your employees. So every company, TMJ, everybody buys benefits for their employees. And it's one of the most painful processes you can go through. So if you're anywhere in that decision-making process, you're looking at spreadsheets, you're going back and forth, you're having 4 or 5 meetings. So we basically do what Expedia does for travel or what QuickBooks does for tax or for accounting. We do that for insurance.
Okay.
So we make it one meeting, painless decision, and make it really easy for employers to buy insurance. So, and that's really all we do as a company.
And because of that, I mean, clearly this is a market that is growing, right? I mean, this is a thing that people need and want, and there's growth opportunities.
It's a pain point in the market, and the growth is limited to however many companies there are in the United States. Yeah. So there's certainly a blue ocean of opportunity. We have about 130 clients, and it takes 150 for us to be profitable, and anything after that, really, the sky's the limit. So it's for me, more than the industry, it's the whole process of finding a need, identifying a need, hiring a great team, and creating a company. To me, that's the really exciting thing. I'm almost industry agnostic. The last company connected ambulances with hospitals. This one solves a pain point in insurance. If there's another one, who knows what that'll do. For me, it's the whole process of creating that company around a need in the industry, regardless of what industry it is.
So you don't know where the roadmap leads yet. It's just what happens to show up on the horizon.
Yeah, and the companies we start, they're not going to be the next Google, or they're not going to be the next Amazon. We're filling a niche, and someday we'll find a home for our company. It's really not going to be a standalone company forever, and that's really been the model with all of our investors and our employees. Interestingly, of all the employees we have, about half of them say they want to start or run their own business someday. Nice. And now they're starting to do it. So we just had an employee that started with us 5 years ago. He just left this week to start his own company. And to me, that's really, really exciting. That's a lot more exciting than just insurance.
Is that easy to do in Milwaukee, start your own company?
It's easy to do if you do it the right way. If you keep your day job and you work on nights and weekends starting something, and you actually create a prototype and it works and you sell it to a few folks, you're going to get investors. If you run around looking for money and all you have is an idea, you're probably going to hear crickets chirping. So, I hear a lot of people say, oh, Milwaukee, it's so hard to raise money. Well, I really don't think it is, but you've got to go about it the right way. You either have to have experience, a track record, an amazing idea, or a combination of those things. And if you don't have the experience, get someone on your team that does, and chances are you're going to find the investment.
Coming up next on WTMJ Conversations.
And know that they know more about this problem than you ever will, and being willing to listen to them and let them lead you down the path.
What Andy Nunemaker learned on the other side of the world.
You're listening to WTMJ Conversations.
Welcome back to WTMJ Conversations. I'm Eric Bilstead. We're speaking with Andy Nunemaker, very successful CEO of Dynamis Corporation in Milwaukee. He's had success in other areas as well. It hasn't always been easy for Mr. Nunemaker. Clearly, you've had success. I don't think that's a secret. You've done very well. Any growing pains along the way?
Of course. And the worst is, you get this reputation all of a sudden of having the Midas touch, and nobody has a Midas touch, right? Everybody makes mistakes, and the question is, can you live through the mistakes and make more right than wrong decisions, and not run out of money along the way, and have the perseverance? Is the real secret. Nobody has the Midas touch, right? And so the hardest thing for me now is kind of trying to fight that perception that everything that you touch turns into gold. It doesn't, and you do make mistakes, and it's getting through those mistakes and realizing what worked then doesn't necessarily work now, and being willing to listen to people, especially your clients, who are the ones that pay you at the end of the day, and know that they know more about this problem than you ever will, and being willing to listen to them and let them lead you down the path.
When you worked for GE Healthcare, you spent time in Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia. Where were you based out of?
Based in Sydney, Australia.
Okay.
So at the time I got the assignment, it was the president of Australia and New Zealand for GE Healthcare. And it was a turnaround situation. We were actually losing money. And so we came in and completely turned the thing around. And then in a year, we were doing so well, they said, well, could you do the same thing for Southeast Asia? The only thing is, when you take over this entire mega territory, the headquarters is Singapore. And I said, well, I'd be happy to do that. I think I know what we need to do. But I'd like the headquarters to be Sydney. I'd actually like to stay in Sydney. And so that was the concession GE made, and away we went.
Sydney Opera House, that'd be pretty cool.
Oh, it was beautiful. I was kind of overlooking the bridge and ran along the Opera House in the mornings. It's just an amazing place to live, a beautiful climate, beautiful people. It was kind of like the U.S. in the 50s. So if you watch the Wonder Years or things like that, that was what Sydney felt like. And that was kind of the way Australia felt, just a lot more relaxed. If you didn't make a sale this quarter, you'll make it the next quarter. So it was a little bit anti-GE and the way things ran with the rigor, but things got done.
Was that odd to come back to the States after spending time there?
Yeah, it was hard on a lot of fronts. I mean, it was just a great assignment, and it was a high-profile job, and just all the doors flung open to you. And then coming back here, I'd worked for GE for a period of time, but then struck out on my own, where it used to be Andy from GE, and you'd be meeting presidents of countries and prime ministers, and now it's like Andy and the company's EM systems, and they're like, who are you? What do you do? So you really have to kind of swallow your pride a little to go from that big corporate international setting to 3 employees where you're the janitor and you're the hiring basically cleaning the toilets and replacing the copy machine.
And I'm assuming you bumped into a Packers fan over there. There has to be at least one walking around.
There's Packer fans everywhere in the world, and there's Packer bars everywhere in the world. The hardest thing, though, is the Packer games are in the middle of the night over there, so it was really hard to watch them live. So I kind of took a break from watching live football.
Coming up next on WTMJ Conversations.
That kind of shook friendships and family, and the reaction to that was really surprising to me.
What it's like being a supporter of President Trump's.
Now, more of WTMJ Conversations.
Eric Bilstad chatting with Andy Nunemaker, the CEO of Dynamis Corporation, also a very big philanthropist in Milwaukee. We're discussing now his support for President Trump. He was there from the very beginning. Let's talk about President Trump. So you've been a big supporter of the president's over the years, or since...
I supported him when he secured the nomination, and I thought he was the best of the 2 choices.
Sure. And you were at the big celebration in New York on election night, right?
I was. It was a party at the Hilton, and he was there, and there were a few different rooms. I guess a few different tiers of the parties.
Yeah.
I was there with a really good friend of mine, Tom Smith, also from Milwaukee, also a supporter, and we went to dinner, and we were just going to go to happy hour and dinner. I thought, well, this party starts at 6, but the returns aren't even going to begin coming in until 9. Right. So let's just make our way slowly. And as we were walking past Times Square, right about 9:15, 9:30, we saw thousands of people with these long faces and all gloomy, looking up at the big signs above Times Squares, and we realized the results were coming in favor of Trump, and these people were all depressed. So we just said, we got to get to this party, and just started running down the street. And I mean, the party was just at the point where he was starting to win some of the early states he wasn't supposed to win. And every state that fell, you could just hear these cheers. And all of a sudden we were ushered into the back room where, Giuliani was there.
Really?
Some of the heavy hitters.
You talked to anyone?
Pence was there. I mean, they were all talking to everybody.
Yeah.
About 200 people in the room. And just a really, really cool feeling. And then finally, we made our way to hear his speech. It was about 1 a.m. when he finally came out and gave the speech, and everyone was just exhausted, but so happy and so excited.
Did you see anyone you didn't expect to see? Any big celebrity that you're like, oh, I didn't expect you to be here?
So the problem with me is I don't have a TV, and so the only time I see people like this are on the news at the gym. So I don't really have good facial recognition of who a lot of these people are. I'm sure we saw a bunch of them.
That's funny.
I don't have permission to say some of the other Wisconsinites who were there, but they're all very, very well known, and they were really excited to be there. I just don't know if they'd want all of your listeners to know they were there.
A year into his presidency, anything surprise you, pro or con?
You know what surprises me is the personal pushback that I got, and the reaction that I stood forward in a fairly public way to support one of the 2 nominees for president, and how that kind of shook friendships and family, and the reaction to that was really surprising to me, how people can get so emotional over a candidate when it was one of 2 candidates, and in every past election people have fallen one way or another. I've just never seen the animosity or actually felt the personal attacks like I did this time. That was a big surprise to stand up and actually in a rational way try to explain why you were supporting a candidate and try to keep emotion out of it, but it seemed like emotion crept into every one of those conversations.
See, I'm afraid that's par for the course now, though. You know what I mean? Like, even when he's gone, when it's 2 new candidates, 2 new politicians, I feel like this weird vitriol and weird tribalism that we're currently in is only going to get more divided.
I have that same fear. I also am hopeful that we can get past this, because he certainly was a divisive candidate and is a divisive president. There's no question about that. For me, it's, can we get the things done that need to get done? And it seems like we're making some progress in that direction. Time will tell. I ran into one of Hillary Clinton's staunchest supporters. He actually did a full-page op-ed in your paper. And the week of the election, he said, well, it looks like your candidate won. And what I told him was, well, I hope I didn't make a horrible mistake. And I think time will tell.
Coming up next on WTMJ Conversations.
From Marquette on the west all the way to the Calatrava on the east, there's a 3-block area in need of help, and we're smack dab in the middle of that. We will bring that entire stretch back.
Andy Nunemaker's love for the Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra and the MSO's big move.
You're listening to WTMJ Conversations.
Eric Bilstead, along with philanthropist, businessman, board member, and everything else. It's Andy Nunemaker, the CEO of Dynamis Corporation. Right now we talk the Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra and the future of the MSO. So big news for the Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra. Before we get into the new relocation, why the orchestra?
Yeah, I played trumpet and French horn as a kid, and I was introduced to classical music by Miss Miller, who was my humanities teacher at Milwaukee Lutheran High School, and by my Aunt Jo, who lent us records to play and listen and learn the symphonies. And so it was always a part of my life. When I moved back to Milwaukee with GE, moved to the east side, and a neighbor on the block was on the symphony board. We became friends, and she suggested that I might think about joining the board as a way of giving back. And so to me, it was just a natural affinity. I played music. I'd gone to the symphony. To me, it was just a great honor to serve on that board, for the past 15 years.
And because of that now, there's a big move that I know you played a role in. The MSO will move to the Grand Theater downtown a few years out, 2020. I think that's the target, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's an exciting time for a venue that hasn't been touched.
It's very exciting. I mean, the theater itself has been mothballed for decades. The Marcus Corporation controls the theater, and actually in 2001 removed, back in probably the 70s or 80s, they put a false floor in so they could split it into two theaters, one on top of the other. They removed that entire area so the symphony could come in and do an acoustical test. As luck would have it, it's acoustically perfect. The shape of the theater, the curvatures of the walls, it really isn't going to need much acoustically. So it was just a great gem, a great find. And it really sets the symphony on a course for financial independence. In our home today, which has served us well at the Marcus Center, we essentially get kicked out for the month of December.
Right.
For the Nutcracker, all right? And the Nutcracker needs to be there. The ballet needs to be there in the month of December. But it would be like telling Macy's or Boston store, well, you can have your stores, but you can't use them in December. The financial model just breaks down. Most symphonies get 25% of their revenue, of their earned income during the month of December. And we're playing essentially for free in churches and parks and around in the community. That's great for the community, but it really doesn't help our bottom line. So this solves that problem. It's a shot in the arm for West Wisconsin Avenue. Mm-hmm. So that's the last stretch of what was our grand thoroughfare. From Marquette on the west all the way to the Calatrava on the east, there's a 3-block area in need of help. And we're smack dab in the middle of that. We will bring that entire stretch back. And then it restores an historic gem that would have been lost forever, the grandest movie theater ever built in Milwaukee, brought back to life. So it's really a triple bottom line. So as we've been doing the fundraising, people have really resonated. They're not just giving a gift to the symphony, they're giving a gift to Milwaukee.
And the MSO will thrive?
Well, the MSO is thriving. So we've got over double-digit increase in butts and seats, so the number of attendees, and in dollars in earned income in the last 3 years. So we've been increasing the number of patrons. We've been diversifying the number of patrons. Just this weekend, we played the score for E.T., so we showed E.T. in Eline Hall and played along with the score. We've done that for Pokemon. Leslie Odom Jr. is coming in a few weeks and bringing in a completely different audience to a sold-out house. So, we're really doing things in anticipation of moving into this hall to diversify the audience, to broaden the audience. So, there was an article saying we're worrying about the aging of the symphony population and the symphony patrons. You know when that article came out? The 1920s.
Ooh.
All right, so this has been going on for a long time. Actually, when you think about the life cycle, our biggest bump in patrons happens when people are in their 40s and their kids are starting to learn music.
Yes.
And then they come back and they bring their family and then they keep coming. So this is just a natural cycle that's been going on. So we're finding ways to kind of counter that trend, but it's actually a good trend.
That's fantastic. I was just thinking about that. My oldest is 11, and he plays percussion for the first year, and he's also in piano. And for a parent, I love the idea of just any type of music because it uses a different part of your brain. So instead of just doing sports or just working on math, you're also creating something. You're creating a melody. You're reading notes, which is different than, say, reading the paper. It helps build a stronger mind for anybody.
Well, it's interesting. They say students who study music are better at math. Students who study the theater and perform in the theater make better orators or litigators. And so this stuff actually really lends itself to the skill sets we need later in life.
When did you fall in love with art?
Interestingly, when I was a little kid growing up in the city, we'd go to church every Sunday, and then my dad and I would drive all around the city with our cameras taking pictures, mostly of trains and train yards. But I got to know the city, and I got to learn photography, and that just stuck with me. So when I started traveling and I started living in some of these other parts of the world, my camera was always there. So I moved back to Milwaukee. All of the art in the house was basically my own photography. And I'm like, well, it filled the walls. It was a good conversation starter. Sure. I never really thought about buying professional art. And started going to the art museum. A friend invited me to the Contemporary Art Society art auction, which is something they hold every few years at the art museum. And I saw a few pieces and looked at the prices and realized, well, they're not ridiculous. These aren't millions of dollars, even though these are big name artists. So I bought a piece at an auction. I bought a piece at another auction, and I just kind of got into it and started going to events at people's homes, like some of these names we mentioned earlier, who are all great art collectors, and learned how they started their collections and how their collections evolved. And next thing you know, I'm in the middle of it. And now it's to the point where it's almost an addiction. My walls are full. I have down to one house finally, and I really don't have a place to put art. So I'm trying to hold back, but every year or every few months you see a piece that's just so meaningful. You feel like you have to have it. So that's an addiction I'm trying to kind of put at bay for now.
Have you ever tried to dabble with like oils or clays or anything like that?
I did. I painted one thing when I was living in Dallas in the early 90s. I painted one scene 3 times. A friend of mine from church was an art teacher. She taught me how to paint, and it was okay. I think one's in my 3rd floor bathroom, one's in my parents' house. I don't know where the 3rd one is, but that was the beginning and the end. We'll leave that to the experts.
Well, that's just it too, though, because one person will see one thing and someone else will see something entirely different. It happens every time, no matter what the piece.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, though, about art. To me, you see these things and they're like, oh, my kid could have done that. I'm like, yeah, but your kid didn't think of it. It's the creativity and the idea, to me, that's as exciting as the execution of the artwork.
Coming up next on WTMJ Conversations,
we bat way above our average for a city our size. We fight above our weight class for a city our size when it comes to the generosity of our community.
Milwaukee philanthropy and what sets this city apart.
You're listening to WTMJ Conversations.
Eric Bilstead here along with Andy Nunemaker, a businessman, an entrepreneur, and a philanthropist. Let's talk philanthropy.
Okay.
It's a big deal.
It is.
And I wonder sometimes if we have enough people that are interested in doing it. Are there cities, and maybe Milwaukee isn't on the list, but are there cities that would not survive without a Steve and Greg Marcus living, or an Andy Nunemaker living in that city?
I certainly am not worthy to be mentioned in the same category as the Marcuses or the Lubars or the Seeligs or the Baumgartners or on and on.
We have a lot. We have many.
We have so many. We bat way above our average for a city our size. We fight above our weight class for a city our size when it comes to the generosity of our community. Luckily for us, we had some very good times as a city and as a region. And a lot of that money through those good times is still here. All right, and we have more good times coming, and we have more companies forming, but we had some of the most powerful companies in the world headquartered here. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that money is still here. And thankfully, a lot of those people and their descendants are still here and are still very generous.
You wonder how many people realize, I mean, you mentioned Lubar, Seeligs, you mentioned all these names. I often wonder if most of us realize what those families have done.
Yeah, the people, and it's interesting, I again, don't want to speak out of turn.
Oh, sure.
A lot of times, we all give our money anonymously for a lot of reasons.
Okay.
Right, but these are people that I've mentioned that have given money in public ways that we've all noticed, and we're all so thankful for. I mean, Senator Cole just gave a very public, very amazing gift to the Milwaukee Public Museum. We have so many great organizations, the Art Museum, the Public Museum, all of the arts organizations, all of the Boys and Girls Club, who's in the middle of a very meaningful and important campaign and is succeeding in that campaign and helping our inner cities and the people who need our help the most. We have so many things like this going on in Milwaukee, and the families who have the means are rising to the occasion.
So why is it that we are so segregated and we have these issues in this community that, yeah, I know every city has issues and crime is always a thing. Poverty, unfortunately, is always going to be a thing. But boy, the numbers here as far as unemployment for minorities, the segregation, which is about as bad as it can get, why does that still happen even though we're batting 1,000, to use your term, or more than that? You know, we have a high batting average when it comes to our philanthropic families.
That's disappointing, and that's a disappointment that our city needs to rise and solve. No question about it. That statistic could hold us back as a city and will hold us back if we don't solve it. I don't have an answer. Talk to a lot of people who are focusing all of their energy on this, whether it be education or alternative programs to help substitute for some family structure that might be missing in some cases, and really helping everybody put their best foot forward. You know, what I've noted, though, in the conversations I've had with folks in all demographics and all parts of Milwaukee, people want to succeed. People don't want to be poor, right? People want to elevate themselves. People want the opportunity. So what we need to do is create those opportunities, and our citizens will take them. Nobody wants to be in that situation, but we're not giving the people in that situation enough alternatives to lift themselves out, I believe. I don't have a solution. Got a lot of anecdotes and a lot of good things happening in small pockets. I just don't know how we coordinate all of these efforts to really make a huge impact.
Does something like Foxconn play a role when there's the opportunity for jobs, or is that a little bit offline?
Well, Foxconn will create jobs. What we need to do is bridge the gap between the people who want those jobs and the ability for them to hold them through education, through job training, through life training, and showing up. How do you get to work, and how do you show up to work every day when you've never had that structure in your life, right? So the education, the training doesn't just how do you read, how do you write, how do you do math. It's job skills training and being able to even hold a job. That we have, unfortunately, a gap who has not been trained in that. It's disappointing to me, and I'd love to spend the next portion of my philanthropic life working with other people to help try to solve this. I have a lot of friends that are thinking the same thing.
I remember talking to a gentleman from the Racine area, Kenosha Racine area, who was in one of these Boys and Girls Clubs or whatever, and he said the one aspect that he often taught the children that were a part of it was just even basic hygiene, using deodorant, you know, brushing your teeth, and these are things that my jaw dropped, because you just assume that everyone learns how to do that. Clearly, that's not the case.
Right, and that's the thing. So those of us that have kind of were fortunate to learn those things early on, you almost have to immerse yourself in the culture and really understand what's happening to appreciate the gaps that are there. Yeah, that is a tough one that I don't have. Unfortunately, there's more questions than answers in my mind. That's a disappointing statistic, and it's an embarrassing statistic for our city.
Coming up next on WTMJ Conversations,
we've got a community that fosters entrepreneurship and people that roll up their sleeves and want to get stuff done.
The Milwaukee startup scene.
Now, more of WTMJ Conversations.
Eric Bilstad wrapping up with Andy Nunemaker. Let's learn more about who Andy really is. It seems like we hear so much about startups nowadays. I don't know why that is, but I feel like that's a term you hear more and more all the time over the last, 10 or 15 years maybe.
Yeah.
What's different with a startup now as opposed to 20, 30 years ago?
I mean, that's so interesting. The word entrepreneur, I don't think existed 20 years ago. Schlitz was a startup. Allen Bradley was a startup. Harley Davidson was a startup. Miller was a startup, right? We've always had startups. Some of them lasted 100 years and all of a sudden they became big corporations. We've got startups that 20, 30 years ago were startups. Direct Supply, Xyway, right? Some amazing Milwaukee companies were startups 20 years ago, and now they're everyday names. So nothing has changed. We've got a community that fosters entrepreneurship and people that roll up their sleeves and want to get stuff done. That's the thing about Milwaukee. The work ethic in Milwaukee is number one. If you look at the stats, our work ethic and our rate of volunteerism is off the charts. So when you have people that are used to giving back and you have people that are used to working and rolling up your sleeves, good things are going to happen. All right, everyone's like, oh, we don't have the capital, we're not Silicon Valley. You're right, we're not Silicon Valley, and we don't want to be Silicon Valley. We want to be Milwaukee and have our own form of startups, which we've always had, and we still have that work ethic.
Doesn't it seem like, too, whenever you think of startups or development, it always has to be some physical thing, or people assume that it has to be this new physical building that needs to be remodeled or built or whatever. Well, a startup doesn't need to be that at all, really.
No, and in fact, so Alice Chalmers, in its heyday, employed 15,000 people in West Allis at its main headquarters. Today, there's more than 15,000 people working on that same location, almost all of them for small companies. All right, so the jobs are still here. This stuff is still happening. It's just kind of the new economy, and it's evolving. I think that's exciting when I drive through there and I see all these companies and I see what's going on there. When you drive through Schlitz Park and you see the companies that are in there, that's exciting to me.
Are there other cities that you see that are doing it right? And not to suggest that Milwaukee isn't doing it right, but when you see a city across the country or maybe across the world, you're like, wow, this is innovative, this is different.
Cities are doing it their own way. All right, and cities are finding their own path and creating their own identities. I was at an event, a great event, trying to spurn investment and talking about startups and talking about technology and how we can make Milwaukee in Austin. And I'm like, Milwaukee's not going to be in Austin. We don't want to be in Austin, right? Austin is Austin. We want to be Milwaukee. So let's figure that out and look at these great natural resources, Lake Michigan. All right, the water technology we have here, of course, that's a big reason Foxconn.
Sure.
Right? And what's happening here with water's going to be the next oil. There's no question about it. All right? So we'll be the next Saudi Arabia in all the good ways, right? And not the bad ways. We're literally sitting on a gold mine for the next generations to come. So how do we take that and capitalize on it?
You said earlier, and I let it go because you were in a moment, so I didn't want to stop it. You said you don't have a television. How is that possible? You don't have a TV in that beautiful house you have?
Yeah, I haven't had a TV. I just don't have time for it. I guess technically my movie room, that can act as a television. It hasn't in years, but it could. But it just, to me, television is just something, and no offense, I know where you work and I know what you guys do for a living. It's just not on my radar screen as a productive use of my time. All right, every minute of my time is spent. And this is where, my lifestyle or how I've chosen to live my life, it can be a little unfortunate. Sometimes I have good friends that say, Andy, let's get a drink or let's grab dinner or let's grab lunch. And I'm booking them out 6 weeks.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. All right? And most of them just don't understand. What are you talking about? Are you blowing me off? I'm like, no, really, I don't have a free night for dinner for the next 6 weeks. And that's just the reality of the way my time gets scheduled. It works for me. It certainly doesn't work for everybody.
So without a TV, do you consume news or entertainment? How do you, obviously you love the arts. Talked about that. Love music. But don't you feel the need, like say on a day where something tragic is happening or on a day the Packers are playing, don't you want to watch that game somehow?
I will watch every Packer game. I just won't watch it at home. I'll go to every one in Lambeau, and I'll go to maybe 2 away games a year, and I'll watch every other game with friends somewhere.
Okay.
So I won't miss that. It's just I'm not sitting at home watching it, and I'm not sitting at home saying, I have a spare hour. What show can I watch? That's just not my psyche.
No, you don't watch television really that much anyway. Is the same set for your phone? Do you use your phone all the time? Is your nose in your monitor or no?
It is a lot, and more than it should be. Most of it is for work. Some of it for antics. But to me, the phone has now unfortunately become a piece of who I am. It's good and bad. So I can take a vacation anytime, and I do take vacations. But while I'm on vacation, I'm also working. It's the blended rather than being balanced. I'm trying to blend work with play. And, I think I do that fairly successfully, but it also means you're never away from work.
All right, what's the next big thing? If you had to look in your crystal ball, what's the next hot thing, whether it's Milwaukee or just globally? What's going to be that trend that we're not thinking of today?
Well, I think we're already thinking of the next big thing is going to be water, and Milwaukee is going to be at the center of it, and Milwaukee will be a world headquarters for water, and that's going to be huge. So if you're thinking about doing a startup and you're thinking about a precious resource that is going to be in high demand in the next 100 years, you should think water and you should move to Milwaukee.
Our thanks to Andy Nunemaker, CEO, businessman, philanthropist here in Milwaukee. There is a lot going on in Milwaukee, and a lot of it has to do with this man behind the scenes, Andy Nunemaker. If you missed any of our conversation, I encourage you to go online now, go onto our mobile app, and listen to any and all of it. WTMJ.com. Thanks again. I'm Eric Bilstead, and thanks again to Andy Nunemaker.